Alright, so today we're going to take a look at this bike that I picked up, go over it a little bit, and kind of see what we can do to get this thing refurbished. What we have here is a born in 2009 Kawasaki make. This is a KX variety dirt cycle, boasting a whopping 250 cc's of brute power, and she's of the 4-cycle variety. So let me bring you in here and we'll kind of take a walk around the bike and find all her flaws and see what we're working with here today. I know the title is a little bit misleading because it actually does run. I did hear it run. What was brought to my attention was, excuse me, it was very difficult to kickstart. It could only bump start. And he says that basically it wants to keep continually pulling, even when you're holding the clutch in. And also he's saying that it idles high. So I didn't get to hear it for too long. It was definitely smoking out of here. So I'm going to suspect that we have some wear in the cylinder, or at least replace a set of piston rings or whatever. So we'll get into that and take a look. And the tires are not too bad. They've definitely seen worse. Chain is decent, a touch over tightened. Wheel bearings seem to be fine in the back anyway. Plastics, yeah, not so good. Decent air filter. Not much oil on it, but it's okay. Oh, it's got one of those bolt things holding it. The shifter, pretty loose. More plastic hanging off. Has a rat infestation on the seat. The radiator's missing its guard, and the clutch cable is improperly routed. A hot start just hanging by a thread. These grips are fantastic here. These will give you absolutely no grip. Whoo, smells like ethanol. Bad choice. Nice polished frame. Pink zip tie. More loose plastic. Your fork seals don't look too bad. I don't see really anything. It's a little, not too bad there. Wheel bearing feels okay. Tires not too bad. Looks like we're going to need some front brake pads. Also missing the guard on this radiator. Well, there's wet stuff in there. Not sure exactly what it is. Fancy breakaway front brake lever. Plastics improperly put together on this side for sure. Now I did jounce the suspension and it actually feels pretty good, so no blown out rear shock or anything. We are leaking oil. First thing that I notice here is this weep hole. Okay, and there is oil coming out of that, and generally what that's telling me is that the valve cover gasket where it mounts around the spark plug tube, the seal is bad or missing or something, so it's leaking oil out of there. That tube's probably filled with oil at this point now. And the hoses don't look too bad. There's a bolt missing or broken on the mount. There is no clamp for the exhaust. Nah, you don't need one of those anyway. Somebody's been kicking on this thing for sure, so she's definitely loose. Like I said, this thing is pulling. That's what he's saying when it's clutch in gear. This basic lever here is fantastically nice, but it is pulling the clutch in, so I'm going to go ahead and assume that he's got warped clutch plates. Steels are damaged. Rear brakes feel good, solid and tight. Oh, they went ahead and spared no expense, and they upgraded to a full Yoshimura sticker on their factory exhaust. And the rear brakes don't look too bad. So that's what we got. Got a clamp missing here holding the brake line. Alright, let's start tearing this thing down and see if we can figure out what's going on. As far as the kicking is concerned, I do try to kick it. It's extraordinarily difficult to kick past the compression cycle. So again, I'm going to lean towards something like a potential decompression issue with the exhaust camshaft, but that's something we're going to go ahead and take a look at. The bike did not have any strange noises when it was running, which is good. So leads for me to believe that there's potentially good bottom end on this bike. So let's tear it apart and let's see what we got. So we got the back end of the bike off, we got the carburetor off. The gas smells not good. Here is our ignition coil. Not sure if you can see that. We're going to go ahead and pull that out, take a look at it. There's definitely oil on it, so this thing is getting oil past the valve cover. Seal. Can't really see down in there. Let's continue to get this cylinder head apart and we'll see what's next. Yeah, we just got straight water in this thing. No coolant whatsoever. Well, before we go any further on the head, I'm actually really super curious as to what this clutch looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and get this apart, take a look at this thing and see how bad the burn is. Well, honestly, the oil on this thing is fairly clean, which is shocking. We pull the lever a few times and see this, how this thing's working. It's definitely releasing enough to the point where this thing should not drag. Usually do these when you're tightening, and I do it when I'm loosening as well. is go in a star pattern. This way you don't twist or warp any of the plates. Okay. Well, the plates are not terribly bad. Do have some marks on them. I've seen these things blue, but they've been overheated so bad. Yeah, there's nothing really crazy jumping off at me here, so I'm going to leave these alone right now. I'll put this back together. Once I get the engine fixed and repaired properly, we'll test on the clutch a little bit more when I can actually ride the bike. So. Alright, so this is what we've got. Take the valve cover off, and if you look down here where the spark plug hole is, there's supposed to be a gasket right here. Somebody took this apart and they left the gasket out of it, so it's definitely leaking oil down into the spark plug cylinder. Alright, so what we're going to do is I'm going to get this thing on the spark plug out, get this thing on top dead center, and on the compression stroke, and we're going to just check the timing, make sure the timing is in spec, and we'll go from there. What I generally do is we'll stick something thin, screwdriver or something, just being cautious, down inside so we can actually feel the piston. Going to rotate the engine counterclockwise. As you can see, the screwdriver is coming up as the piston comes up till we're on top dead center. Alright, well, I had to go get my light and my glasses because one, I'm old, and two, the marks on this thing are ridiculous to see. So basically I've got it at top dead center. One thing I'm noticing right off the bat here is, and I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see this, probably not. There's a little mark inside of there that you have to line up with these two slots. Okay, that's dead on. We come up here and look at the cam. So your intake cam, there's one little mark that's lined right up with the head right here in this corner. And then the exhaust is off by one tooth. Okay, so that's going to be an issue right there. Secondly, let me reposition. This right here is the decompression for the exhaust. And this is supposed to actually, when this starts spinning fast enough, it flings this weight out and it allows a little ball that's inside the camshaft to slide up so that it doesn't actually hold the exhaust valve open. So what I'm finding with this is that it seems like it's working okay. It felt a little sticky at first, so I'm going to pull the cam off and we're going to make sure that that little ball is working properly. But it seems like it's doing okay right now. So Kawasaki, on their cam caps, they mark, I'm not sure if you can see the numbers, that is the tightening sequence that they want you to use. I also use it for taking it off, so we're going to take these off now. Something else I want to note here, and I'm not sure if you can see it. See if I can bring you in a little closer. There's a little retaining ring, and it's there on the intake valve. It is not there on the exhaust valve. I may end up finding this down inside the stator case. It may have dropped down, but we're going to take a closer look as we tear this apart. What I like to do with my timing chain is I'll put a zip tie on it, and this way you can hold it up from falling down inside the case. But with ours, it doesn't really matter because I'm going to take that apart anyway. Now that I got the head off, I'm going to go ahead and inspect everything to make sure there's nothing painfully obvious. Now you got to watch out for these spring buckets right here. These things will fall out if you flip this upside down, and that's where your shims are underneath for adjusting your cams, but I'll get into that, or your cam clearances. I'll get into that a little bit here. So I'm just going to hold these in as I flip it over. I want to look at the underside and look at the valves, and this thing's actually extremely clean. So somebody's been in it. Either they put it off one tooth, or that tensioner was bad and it jumped. So let's go ahead and, normally you wouldn't take the head off to do this, but we're going to go ahead and check the valves. Clearances. I like to, since I'm taking the head apart anyway and checking the piston, I'm going to just do it right on the bench. It makes it a lot easier to get in here, and I'll show you how to do that. Before we get into doing any of the valve shimming, I want to talk about that automatic decompression. So this is your exhaust cam right here. Like I said, as this spins faster, centripetal force will throw this weight out, and when it does that, I'm not sure if you can see this little pin. It has a little high spot on it. So as that turns, that goes to a flat spot. And as that spins out like that, it allows the valve to pass over this cam lobe without depressing. So what happens is, at low speed, when this is in, this actually holds the exhaust valve open just slightly so you can kick past the compression stroke. As it gets going, this will spin out and allow it to go with full compression and start the engine. I've got them all screwed down. I'm going to go ahead and just lightly snug them. And make sure your camshafts still turn nice and free. If once you got the cam caps tightened down, these cams bind like tremendously, that could definitely indicate an issue with a clearance from the bucket to the camshaft itself. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at that right now. When you've got these cam caps tightened down, you want to make sure that the actual lobe of the cam is up or in the proper position where it should be with the timing marks. Generally with the Kawasaki's, they'll face apart like that. The exhaust one you can't turn because of that specific decompression that I was talking about. If you push that down, then you can actually turn past it. But that's generally where you want to do it. And you want to actually take your measurement between the cam bucket, which is down inside, or the valve spring bucket I should say, down inside in between the cam lobe. Now if your cams, when these are torqued down, don't spin nice and free, there's a very good chance that your valve shimming is off and it's actually dragging on the valve. My exhaust is very tight, doesn't want to turn, not like the intake, turns very easily. So we're going to go ahead and take some measurements. The exhaust side on this particular one is between 0.17 and 0.22 millimeters. And on the intake side is 0.10 to 0.15 millimeters. So what we use is a feeler gauge at the proper size. And this is a 0.18 millimeters. So this is sort of right around, it's in the range for the exhaust. So on the exhaust side, we'll stick it down between the cam bucket and the cam, and it actually goes fine. So that's good. The second one will not go in whatsoever. So that clearance is way too tight. We definitely need to shim this one. So I'm going to measure them all out. We're going to take measurements and write down what our findings are so we know once we get our shims out how to adjust it. And we'll go from there. Okay, well this is what I've got for my measurements up top here. If you can see that, shows where the range is supposed to be for the exhaust. So 0.17 to 0.22. On the driver's side, I've got 0. It's actually touching the bucket. There's a problem there. That needs to definitely be shimmed. And I'm going to check the valve. I'm actually going to pull these valve springs and everything apart on this particular model because it was smoking. I'm going to go ahead and replace the valve seals and potentially the rings as well once we get those measured up. But the exhaust side, exhaust on the passenger side per se, is 0.28, so that's out of spec as well, but better. The intake is 100% in spec at 0.13 and 0.13. So we're just going to mess with the exhaust side a little bit. All right, I've got the exhaust cam back off again, and these are the buckets I'm talking about here. You actually just put a magnet on, you can pull them out. I'm not sure if you can see inside of there, but there's actually a shim down inside there, and that shim has a thickness, and they make shims that have different thicknesses, and that's how you adjust your valves. So we will adjust that one. problem I'm having here is that this bucket is stuck in here, so we need to try to figure out what's going on there. All right, one other thing we did notice here when we were taking this apart is if you can look at the valve keepers, I'm not sure if you can see that real well in the exhaust valves, this thing's about to drop both of these exhaust valves. The keepers are actually coming out, okay? If you look at the intake side, obviously they're sitting in there properly the way they're supposed to be, so definitely good thing we caught this, because this was about to be a major issue. So we'll take it apart, look at the valves, and make sure that the valves are good. All right, we got the cylinder off, piston out. It looks like this is just done not too long ago. The cylinder actually has a real nice cross hatch pattern in it. Almost looks brand new. It has a Vertex piston, stock bore 76.95. I'm not sure if you can read that right there. The piston looks good. It definitely looks like maybe the valve was hitting the piston. Very close. And that could be because those keepers are actually falling out. But I'm going to pull the rings and put them in the cylinder, and let's see what kind of gap we've got. Alright, so we've got our cylinder off, piston out, we pulled the rings off, and what we're going to do is go ahead and take these rings. We're going to stick them in the cylinder. Just be very gentle with them, because you can break them. Generally what I like to use is the piston itself, so I can push the rings down towards the bottom of the cylinder, and then we're going to go ahead and check the ring gap. So what we're looking at is right here, and what we do is measure that with feeler gauges to make sure that's within spec, and that looks like it's within spec, but I would definitely measure it. Let's check the oil rings. So, this thing is so tight, I don't even see a gap at all. I believe it's right there. And that is way too tight. They're practically touching. And check the other ring. This one already has an issue. If you look, I don't know if you can see that if I put light behind it, that ring's not even touching the cylinder wall. This thing was not gapped properly and it warped. So it's definitely going to need a set of rings for sure. Piston looks okay. Alright, so we have a pretty good overview of what we're looking at here on the bike. I'm going to go ahead and get some parts ordered, and let's see what happens when they come in. We'll go ahead and put this bike back together. Let me just say I appreciate you watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. Throw a thumbs up at it if you like. Hit the bell if you want to see notifications on when I do my next videos. There will be a part 2 to this video. Obviously, when the parts get in, we'll get it put back together and get the bike up and running. Definitely appreciate it. Also down in the comments, if there's anything you'd like to see or something you'd like me to change. I'm pretty new at this. Any suggestions, creative criticism, anything you want to put, I'd certainly appreciate that. I'll try to reply to everything. And thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.